as an authoritarian regime?
Do you ever wonder what the purpose of the dress code is?
Do you feel uncomfortable when a teacher is literally breathing down your back just to see what you're doing on your laptop?
Do you know your student rights and their limits?
We all know that in the Constitution we have the freedom of speech, the right to practice any religion, the right to bear arms, and...
Okay, but what exactly are student rights?
The name is self-explanatory. Student rights are the rights you have as a student in school. As all rights are, there are limitations to prohibit certain behaviors.
The right that students have is the freedom of speech, as long as it is not disruptive to the learning environment. For example, in the court case Tinker vs. Des Moines, a group of students planned to wear black wristbands to school to protest the Vietnam War. As a result, they were suspended. The Supreme Court ruled that this violated the students' First Amendment rights because they were not being disruptive with their actions.
Students are also granted the freedom of expression, as long as it abides by your school's dress code and not by personal preferences of staff. You are within your rights to dress how you please.
Dress codes are controversial for often targeting groups of students. However, the Constitution protects students' freedom of expression and freedom from discrimination along with their right to peacefully protest. An example of this would be when a Massachusetts charter school penalized 2 African American students for wearing braided hair extensions, sparking protest and legal action. The policy has since been modified after the state attorney general found it unconstitutional.
You also have the right to privacy. Although it is not mentioned in the Constitution, several of the amendments create this right, as stated by the Supreme Court. The Fourth Amendment protects our right to have our personal lives free from invasion, as long as there is no valid suspicion of a crime. If there is suspicion, only administrators can search your property.
Let's not forget that students have the right to go through the due process of law. This was the question in the court case Goss vs. Lopez, in which 9 students from Ohio were suspended without given a hearing. The court decided that the right could not be withdrawn since citizens are given the right to an education. Therefore, students should get a notice of a hearing before getting suspended.
Now that you know what rights you have, the question is how they can be violated by schools.
Remember that because of the in loco parentis concept, which states that schools substitute for parents and are responsible for everyone's well-being, there are extra measures or limits that are set to ensure that every child has a decent learning environment.
Schools are allowed to counter the Fourth Amendment and search you without a warrant. For example, in New Jersey vs. TLO, a girl was caught smoking but denied it. After this, her purse was searched by her vice principal without a warrant present. Evidence that linked her to a drug dealing was found. The court ruled that the school was permitted to search students without a warrant if there's a reasonable suspicion or witness of a crime.
Schools are also allowed to violate the freedom of the press by censoring or omitting anything in the school's press. This is what happened in Hazelwood vs. Kuhlmeyer when the principal of Hazelwood High School deleted several articles from the school's newspaper because they were inappropriate. The Supreme Court decision that was made regarding this was that schools had the right to refuse publishing anything that was inconsistent with the shared values of a civilized social order.
But wait, there's more!
In Vernonia vs. Acton, the Vernonia School District ruled that student athletes have to agree to random drug tests because it was a growing concern. James Acton, a student, was prohibited from playing on a football team after refusing to participate in a drug test. The concluded decision was that the responsibility of school officials to protect common good overrides the minimal, if any, intrusion in student athletes' privacy.
In response to the questions asked at the beginning of the video, your school may seem as though they have total control, and that's just because they are responsible for each student. So they always have to take extra precautions to fulfill that responsibility, even if it results in violating rights.
It's important to remember that discrimination is never and will never be allowed. Schools cannot discriminate on the premise of race, gender, sexuality, immigration status, religion, etc.
If you feel as though your school is targeting a certain audience, contact the ACLU at 212-548-2500.